So welcome to our YouTube channel. That's what we call the good life. Today I'm going to be planting my potatoes, and I'm going to be showing you how I plant my potatoes. I'm going to be telling you all the different types of potatoes you can plant and how you can plant them, and also some things to avoid and some diseases and pests as well. So if you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from my allotment, my home garden, and from time to time my home kitchen. Now, potatoes are a really fun and easy thing to grow if you've never grown anything before, and if you have grown lots of things before, potatoes are still a really good thing to grow, because I think most of us eat potatoes in some shape or form, and they are a really simple thing to do. So to get started, first of all, you need to think about the types of potato that you want to grow. So obviously what you like, whether you like floury ones, whether you like waxy ones, because you don't want to go growing a potato that you don't really enjoy very much. So that's one of the first things you need to consider. The other thing is there are three types of potato. There's first earlies, second earlies, and main crop. Now your first earlies you put in first, obviously, and you normally put them in around mid-March. Some people even put them in a little bit earlier if they've got a greenhouse or the climate is a little bit warmer. They typically grow a lot quicker in as little as 12 weeks, but they don't get anywhere near as big, and you usually don't get the yield that you get with the later crops. The second type of potato you can grow are second earlies. Now these ones you put in a week or two later, and again they grow quicker than a main crop do, and again you typically don't get quite as much, although to be fair the variety I get is quite a good prolific type. So that's your second earlies, and then of course there's your main crop. Now your main crop you put in a little bit later, more like mid-April, and they're a lot longer in the ground, but they typically get a lot bigger and you get a much bigger yield out of them. So they're really good for storing. So your first earlies and your second earlies don't store quite as well, but your main crop are the ones that you store that are going to see you through the winter. And if you're lucky enough like me, I've still got a few left and it's early spring, but not that many. So that's the different types you can grow. The other thing you need to consider are pests and disease. Now I often go for varieties that are quite resistant to pests for the things that I know I have in this part of in my allotment or this part of the country. One of the things I get is a little bit of wireworm and slug damage, so I choose varieties that I personally have found less susceptible, and when I've looked them up they've also been less susceptible. So I go for Charlotte, Kestrel, and I've got Maris Piper this year. I grew Picasso last year and they were terrible, and I knew it was the potato because the other two varieties were absolutely perfect, and it was just the Picasso that was really attacked. So I've looked up for Maris Piper for my main crop, so hopefully that will help too. The other thing that a lot of people have problems with is blight. Now generally speaking your early varieties don't get any blight, or less likely. The potato blight comes more for the later crops. So one way of avoiding blight is to just do first earlies and second earlies. Now if you get what you think is blight, the only thing you can do is just cut the stems off ground level and hope for the best, and unfortunately they won't keep very well. But what I will say is don't mistake blight for normal dieback. So while you're growing your potatoes, obviously we're too soon to look at those things now, but yeah, don't get the two confused, because I see a lot of people thinking they've got blight when actually they've just got normal dieback, because the potatoes have finished what they're doing and the leaves are just naturally dying back like nature would intend. So just to remind you, I will be planting some of my potatoes today, and I'm going to be giving you two ways of planting them so you can choose what's best for you. So moving on, a lot of people keep asking to chit or not to chit. I do chit my potatoes, and the reason I do it is purely because it gives it a head start. What you're looking for are little tiny stumpy shoots like this. I have got a short video on it, but basically you keep them in a cool frost-free environment, and it does need to be light, so not somewhere dark, and you get these little stumpy shoots, and that's exactly what you want. You do not want long straggly ones if you put them in a dark place. The reason for that is they're possibly not going to produce the strongest plants, and you could knock them off as well. So it's these little stumpy ones here, and if people are wondering, this is what will grow up. So this will be your leaves. That's why you often only get the shoots on one side. You'll get the roots coming out of the bottom where you'll get your potatoes, and this top bit will actually become your foliage. Now if you haven't had time to chit, it doesn't matter. All this does is gives it a head start. So it's not the end of the world if you haven't got anywhere to chit them or you haven't had the chance. So if you just buy your bag of seed potatoes and you just pop them in the ground, that's perfectly okay. They'll just be a little bit slower to the party, that is all. Now if you feel you get value from my video, if you would like to buy me a coffee, there will be a link on the screen and there will be one in the description. However, if all you can do is like, comment and subscribe, I would still be more than grateful of that, because the more people that like, comment and subscribe, the more people that YouTube will show this to, and the more people I can help grow their own fruit and vegetables, and that's what this is all about at the end of the day. So the gloves are on, we're now in business, and I'm going to start planting my potatoes. Now something I learned very, very recently, because we all have this debate about earthing up, to earth up or not to earth up. And I've been watching a lot of other YouTube videos, and I actually found out there's two types of potatoes. There's determinate and indeterminate. Now determinate grow on one level, so you don't need to earth up. You do need to put a little bit of mulch over the top, you know, whether it's, you know, some mulch off your composter, whether it's grass, whether it's straw, but they only grow on one level. And then there's indeterminate. Now indeterminate, they grow up the stem, so you do need to earth those up. Now I did have a look for the different varieties to see what, because I'd already bought mine, so I didn't know whether I had determinate or indeterminate. Well, it turns out that my second early's kestrels are definitely determinate and my Maris pipers are definitely indeterminate. So I know my kestrels I don't have to earth up, I just need to put a little bit of mulch over them, and my Maris piper I most definitely do need to earth up. Now with my Charlottes, I've not been able to find out. It generally seems that first earlies and second earlies are more likely to be determinate. Now if anyone knows who's watching this what a Charlotte potato is, I'd really, really like to know, but I'm going to take a little bit of a punt and I'm going to assume that they're determinate and see how it goes. So I'm just going to keep an eye on them, but if it looks like they need earthing up more, then I will do that. So moving on to actually getting these planted into the ground. Now it's really handy to have some kind of fertiliser. Now you can buy potato fertiliser, fish blood and bone is perfectly okay, as are chicken pellets. To put a little bit in the ground, because they are very, very hungry plants. They're also very thirsty, and keeping them well watered is a really good idea, because if you don't keep them well watered, they obviously might not grow very well and you're more likely to get scab, and we don't want that on our potatoes. Even though they're own potatoes, it's not the end of the world if you can avoid that. Keeping them well watered while the tubers are growing is one way of stopping that from happening. So the two ways I'm going to plant today is, I've already dug a trench. Now obviously that is quite a lot of hard work to do, and if you don't want to dig a trench, I'm going to show you a different way of doing it as well. So the first way is digging a trench, which I've done. So I'm going to sprinkle just a small amount of some multi-purpose manure that I've got, just to give them a little bit of a head start. It's worth putting a little bit in the trench to help them get off to a good start. Not too much, but a small handful like I'm doing there, will just help feed them. I did dig a little bit from my composter into that as well. So it has got a little bit of natural compost from up there, but I've added a little bit as well myself. Now if you don't put them in, and if I'm really honest, for years and years I just popped my potatoes in the ground like that. I didn't look as to what way round they went, but if you remember or you can be bothered, then just angle the potatoes so that the little shoots are facing up, because that's what's going to be the leaves. Now when I cover this up, there's every chance they'll fall over, and I wouldn't worry about that. Just poke them in the ground and try and keep them upright, but don't get too het up about it, because like I said, for years and years I never even knew there was a top and a bottom, and they all still grew perfectly okay. I think we can all stress about things a little bit too much. If I'm really honest, potatoes are really pretty hardy, even with a frost. One thing to bear in mind, the only thing frost will generally do, it won't kill your potatoes off, it will just slow them down. So that's all it'll do. If you get them out a little bit too early, because you live in part of the country where it's not quite so warm, when you're more likely to get a heavy frost, it's just going to slow them down. It's not going to be detrimental. so don't get too worked up about it. With spacing, with first earlies and second earlies, they can go a little bit closer together, and with main crop, then they need to be further apart. About 30 centimetres. I normally do about a boot length, I must admit. So again, not too exact. Sometimes it comes down to how much space you've got in your garden. Obviously don't put them too close together, but about 30 centimetres for first earlies and second earlies. So Charlotte's are technically classed as a second early, but I love them so much, I put them in as a first early because I really like it. So there we go. So that's the trench method. And then all you need to do is just rake it over. I'll try not to tread on any potatoes while I'm doing it. It wouldn't be the first time. So I've just got a rake here. Some people say, can I earth up straight away? You can earth up straight away. Obviously I'm not earthing these up, but if I was putting my main crops in, you can, but it's not necessary to. Technically potatoes will always still grow even if you've buried them down quite deep, but don't bury them down too deep, otherwise they might struggle to get to the surface. But I generally earth up as and when I need to, because apart from anything else, if you've just dug a trench or even put through the effort of putting them in the ground, you're knackered by the time you get to the end of it and you haven't got the strength to earth them up. The depth I've put them down is probably about 1 foot deep in the ground. That's actually probably quite deep for me. If they weren't quite as deep down as that, it wouldn't really matter that much because my other method won't be quite as deep down as this. So as long as they're about 1 foot in the ground, that should be enough. So all I've got to do is just gently bash the soil over the top like that. So it's not difficult. So again, those potatoes might have fallen over and I won't worry about it. I will just, you try and keep them as upright as you possibly can. Obviously while you're raking it, try not to damage your potato. For some reason, everyone on our allotment this year, our soil seems a lot more clayey than usual, which sounds like a really odd thing to say. It's like someone added a bit of extra clay over the winter, which I'm sure they didn't, but we've all been moaning about the same thing. So if anyone knows why that might be the case, I'd be really interested to know. So it's made our life digging this over a little bit harder than it would normally be, and the need to put some of my well-rotted compost from my composter has been very handy this year. So we are definitely a little bit harder than usual. I'll finish covering this up and we'll move on to the other another time, and I will move on to the other method now. As you can see, even just raking it over takes a little bit of puff. So the other method is just to use a trowel. So I obviously dug and weeded all this over before I started about a week ago. And this way, let's get some fertiliser, is just to use a trowel. So just to do yourself a hole, and you don't need to do it that deep really, about the length of the trowel, can you see? So if you're using your trowel, you can drop your potato down. Now I'm going to pop a little bit of this in while I do it, and then I'm just going to pop my spud in, like that. So if you don't want to do lots of digging, then you can do that. And I remember one year when we didn't have much time, this is the only method we did, and I think we possibly got the best potatoes we've ever got. One year we were in a real rush to get everything in the ground. I'd ordered far too many potatoes and I didn't have the time or the energy to go digging trenches, so it was either sow all the seed potatoes that I'd got or throw them away, and I definitely wasn't going to do that.